Hey, I'm John. Welcome back to Underhill Creations and Casting Solutions. I'm out in the yard today. It's a beautiful day. The sun's shining. There's a cool breeze. The flowers are blooming, and that's exactly why I want to be out here. I'm going to show you how I take a flower like this and I repurpose it into my resin cast for making pens, handles, and bottle stoppers. Now, as you can see, some of these are kind of wind battered and beat up because we've had some pretty windy nights. But the ones I'm looking for are these that are already starting to dry. So I pick them. I'll go through and pick anything that's already starting to dry and close up on me. If I get them early enough, they still have color. If you wait too long, like with this one, this sat too long in the weather elements in the sun, and there's really not much color left, and you won't get much character out of that. So I like to pick them when they still have a little bit of shape to them, because that gives more surface in my resin, and it'll allow me to show off more of that color in the cast. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to pick these. As you can see, I leave them in a cardboard box and I'll let them dry out flat, and then after they're dry, I'm able to put them in a larger box with the rest of them. But I'd like to wait until they're nice and dry before I mix them so they don't stick together. So I'll go ahead and finish hitting the rest of the planters, and I'll meet you back at the shop. Alright, so once I pick the flowers out, I keep them in a cardboard box. If they're damp or wet, I'll lay them flat. Normally when I pick them, they're fairly dry because we've had a pretty hot summer. So as I pick them, I dry them out. I'll put them in a box. So as you can see, with the pansies, they're pretty good about keeping color. A lot of the flowers over the years that I've tried will lose their color in resin. I've had pretty good luck with the pansies, not so much with the lilacs. Another option, a lot of people will use this silica gel crystal, and you just cover the flowers with that and it'll pull the moisture out of them. But in this case, I just let them air dry and I've had really good luck. So next, what I want to do, I'm going to take a handful of flowers and I'm going to lay them out on a small cookie sheet. I just kind of space them out. I usually take more than what I need, because once you dry them in the oven, it's okay to put them back in the box. But I like to have enough to fill my mold. So I'm going to lay them out on a cookie sheet like that, and I'm going to go place them in the oven somewhere around 200 degrees, 2.25, just enough to burn off any humidity or moisture that may be on the flowers and get them nice and dry. And usually I'll leave them in there for about 30 minutes once that oven reaches temperature. Alright, so the flowers are dry. You can see they're nice and air dry, nice and light, no moisture. So now what we have to do is decide which mold we're going to use. We've got a couple of options. Obviously, if I was going to do a bottle stopper or a handle mold, I'd use a larger casting rack, something like this. Now for pen blanks, I can pour it in a block mold, the square block mold, but everything, I feel like these flowers have a better chance of settling at the bottom and then the resin being on top. So when you turn it, you're only going to have flowers on the bottom. So in this case, I like to cast them vertically. You have two options. It really all depends on the size, the height, how many you're going to do. If I were going to do a bunch of them, I'd use a rack like this, and I would cut my tubes to the length I need. This is the vertical casting rack at Exotic Blanks, and you just pop these caps on the bottom, and I can cut these tubes as tall or short as I want. So if I were going to make a Sierra, I could cut it short. If I were going to do a 2.5 pen like a roller ball, I could cast something a little taller. I've also got the cavity mold. It's got 6 cavities in it. And in this case, I'm just going to pour a few of these just to show you how I do it. So I'm going to use this cavity mold. So I've already gave it a light mist of mold release in here. That way it makes it easier to demold. Next, what we're going to do is mix the resin. So I'm using Alumilite Clear. I've already weighed it out. I've got a couple 100 grams of A and B, and I've measured that on my postal digital scale. And you want to make sure that it's equal amounts by weight. So in this case, I've got my cup labeled for A and B, so as I reuse these cups today, I don't cross-contaminate the resin by accidentally putting B in the A cup and starting that reaction. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take A and B. I'm also going to be using some mica powders, and in this case I'm using pearl white. So I'm going to go ahead and mix these now. I'm going to pour B into A because B is thicker, and it's easier to get the resin away from the side walls if it's thinner already there. So I like to pour B into A. So in this case I've also chosen the cups that I'm actually going to be able to fit in. Obviously if I were pouring more I'd use a larger mixing container. So I've got my electric drill and my spade bit. I could mix this by hand, but it's so much quicker and easier to use a drill. And this resin has about a 7-minute working time. I won't need all of that working time. And because we're only using one solid color of mica, I don't even have to wait for a certain temperature. I'm able to pour it as soon as it's ready. Alright, so as you can see, it started out a little cloudy, and with proper mixing it goes clear, but there's a lot of air in there. We're not concerned about the air because we're going to be using a pressure pot. So now I'm going to take the mica powder, and I will tell you there's no set recipe for this stuff. Some places say they like to use a gram of mica per every ounce of resin. It really is all up to you what your transparency desires are. In this case, I'm not too concerned about it being real opaque. I want to make sure that I can see the flowers in the powder, so I'm not going to add much more than that. Now comes the fun part of mixing this without spilling it all over the workbench, and as you can see, this stuff will float. You get a little airborne on you. You just take your time. You got plenty of working time with this stuff. Once you get that powder off the top, you can get a little more aggressive with it. As you can see, it's not really a white, it's more of a pearl. And that's what I like about this. It mixes up very quickly. Also, always have shop rags on hand. As you can see, I'm using an old sock. I use socks, t-shirts, whatever. They all come in handy. So I'm going to zoom in on this so you can see the color in it is really more of a pearl and less of a solid white. That mica gives it more of a shimmer. Now because we're only using one color, I don't have to wait and worry about color separation. So in this case, I just want to get the resin and the flowers in and everything mixed. So I have two options. If I were using a larger mold like this, I could put the flowers in the mica resin and just swirl them all together and pour it as one big mixture. I've found through experience that oftentimes that resin will spill all over because the flowers fall out and hit the edge and it makes a big mess. So now what I like to do is just take the flowers by hand and drop them in my molds. I'm not trying to pack them in there, crunch them down, anything like that. I'm just dropping them in. And I usually put 3 or 4 based on their size or their configuration. Put them in the molds. At no rhyme or reason on upside down, right side up. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to drop them in there. And then I'm going to come over the top and I'm going to pour maybe an inch or 2 of resin. That resin's going to settle around the bottom of those flowers. And then I'm going to top them off with more. So I'll spend the next couple of minutes putting flowers in, and the less I talk, the more I get done. So as you can see, this is pretty much the whole process. Drop a few flowers, spill a little resin. Sometimes you have to just kind of push them down the hole a little bit. You hope they fall and roll down there on their own. That way they're not packed and they're more or less just kind of sitting in there, and I think that gives you a better look with your blank. Whoa. But as you can see, they'll bubble up because there's air pockets underneath of them. But we'll take care of most of that when we pour or when we put it under pressure. And this is the whole process. So I'll finish the rest of this mold, and then we'll put it under a pressure. I'm going to put it under 50 pounds of pressure, and then let it set for an hour and a half. And after that, we should have some good blanks to demold. Alright, so it's been an hour and a half now. The flower blanks are ready. Let's check them out. I always open the pressure pot opposite of each other. That way I'm not putting any stress on the threads. If I were to open one side, it may pull back and then dig into them metal threads on metal threads. So there's our mold. Get this out of the way. Alright, so there's our blanks. The pressure will make the levels go down a little bit, but these are 6-inch depth blanks. So just to kind of show you what we're going to get out of them, what I do is I take my air hose and I put a little spout on it. That will help direct the air in where we need it. And then I just pull the silicone back and our blanks come out. You want to hold your hand over it so that it doesn't shoot up, hit your ceiling, break your ceiling lights, put a hole in your ceiling, whatever. So it's much easier to just put your hand in along the side, just spray a little bit. Alright, so here's our blanks. And as you see, there is a little bit of excess of resin on top. You can either take it to the bandsaw or just come in here with the razor blade and just kind of trim them off, depending on how thick it is. Sometimes the flowers can be a little hard to cut, so anything thick I'll take off with a bandsaw. Other than that, I can just remove some of this stuff and we're ready to go. Now, you're not always going to see what's going on in these blanks through the outside, obviously, because the flowers are kind of in the middle. So you will start to see some of the dark spots. So because these are pen blanks, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let them cure for a full 24 hours. Tomorrow sometime, I'll cut them to the length I need on the bandsaw. I'll drill and epoxy in my white painted brass tubes. I always paint the brass with these because the brass will show through when you get turned thin, and you don't want that glare of the brass. I want to keep this nice and a pearl looking. So I'll paint my brass tubes white, then I will epoxy them in there. Some guy, you can paint the whole white too if you want. But in this case, I'm fine with just painting the brass tubes. I don't have any shine coming through, and the epoxy isn't visible because I used enough mica in this. So we'll get them cut, epoxied, and then a pen turned down and show you our end results. Alright, well, here's our end results. I've chosen the C-Series Junior from Exotic Blanks, and this is our blank. As you can see, we get some nice color from the pansies. We get the purples and the reds in there with a little bit of the browns and where the white on the flowers are with the mica swirled. So it's just a nice look. It's something different, and what a great way to recycle some of the flowers and maybe recover a little bit of that money we've spent planting them around the house over the years. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. Pretty simple. I hope this fuels a little bit of imagination out there. I hope you guys are able to take this idea and run with it. As you've seen, the pansies work really well. Experiment with some of the flowers you have in your area and see what you can come up with. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up to let me know I'm doing something right. And I appreciate all comments, so if you have any ideas, something you want to see, well, drop me a line and let me know. Be sure to subscribe for more upcoming videos here at Underhill Creations and Casting Solutions.